Alright folks, don't forget to leave a number down in the comment section 1 through 5,900 for your chance to win this beautiful piece of Fordite or Detroit agate. And if you'd like to help support the channel, you could purchase this beautiful Fordite braided necklace that I made in this video here. It has a little piece of jadeite jade as a backing bead, which makes it adjustable. Howdy there folks, this is Lapidary Dave, and right now I'm going to be making a video on Fordite. I'm sure most of you folks have heard about this material or have cut it yourself. Fordite is a paint that was used during the manufacturing of Ford vehicles in Detroit, Michigan, or at least that is the original Fordite. It comes in little sheets like this, but also comes in some very cool nodules, which when cut have a much more dramatic display of colors. Depending on what vehicles were being sprayed, you can get a few different cool variations in color on any particular piece of Fordite material. The gentleman who sold this to me at the Buena Vista Gem Show told me that this is from the Ford Focus factory, which makes sense. There's some real casual colors in this: yellow, white, black, red, blue. On some different materials from the original Fordite factory, you can find like golds and greens, some really cool like metallic blues and metallic reds. I hear that the more custom color cars provided the more precious Fordite material. Yep, today we're going to be cutting the sheet. There's two ways to cut the sheet. You can either cut it, flat, which will create some really cool pools in color, or you can cut it on the side, which will create some really cool lines of color, which is a little bit more 60s looking to me, in my opinion. But today we're going to cut it flat, since there's not a lot of material if I was to cut it sideways. Alright folks, so I'm going to start off by cutting a piece that I will be cabbing. This material is very, very soft, and in fact later I will be mentioning how this poses a problem while trying to polish. Please excuse my dirty saw. It is super muddy from cutting rhodochrosite with pyrite, and I just didn't clean it before this video. I forgot to mention earlier that this material used to go for a lot of money, and perhaps on rare pieces it still does. I bought this material for $6 an ounce during the Buena Vista Gem Show, and the gentleman did tell me it was authentic Ford Focus. But in the recent years, I've been hearing that people have been counterfeiting it from using like paints from Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and such. And that, put a big damper on the market. So for this video, I will be using my Easy Cab by Simple Elegance Company. Since Phoenix was using my Cab King, we were cutting about 100 pieces of turquoise. If anyone is interested in any, holler at us. We sell it very reasonably, from about $1 to $5 a gram, depending on the material. She was over for about a week. It was really nice to have some company in the shop. She is a great lapidary. Find one of her videos here on my channel of her setup during the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show. All right. So I am going to use 80 grit. I'm going to dome the face. That is my main priority, and get a decent shape. I will not be polishing the back. I almost never do that on Fordite, and I don't really think I've ever seen anybody do that on Fordite. This material is very soft, as I've said before. The trick to me is finding a color you want on the face and then leaving it. For instance, you can see the yellow here. I really wanted that to be the main color of this material, so I left it the way it was. This material is very, very dirty, leaves a huge mess on my machine. So now I'm hopping over to 220 grit. I'm not worried too much about the facets left from 80 grit because this material is so soft. I'm going to be leaving facets until about 600 grit, believe it or not. If you see here even more yellow is exposed on this 220 than the 80 grit. I did that on purpose. I barely scratched into the yellow on 80 because I know I'm going to keep digging into this yellow more and more up until about 600 grit, since this material is so soft and the layers are so thin. It's pretty great shape. I love the little bubble in the back, the little pimple. It's cute. I will be hopping over to 280 grit now. Slowly start removing these facets. However, I will still be leaving a few for the next two wheels. Now we're off to 280 grit soft wheel. Even though I am removing some of the deeper and larger facets left from 220, I have to keep the material moving or I will create facets on this soft wheel. It's almost impossible to see through the camera, but there are still a few facets here and there which were left from the 280, but I think it's looking great. This material can undercut a little bit, so just be a little bit careful, get used to seeing it. Right here where my finger is, there's actually a void, and it's exposing a black paint underneath the material that was getting polished. It's a basic flaw in Fordite. I think it looks great, so I'm going to be leaving it there. So this is 600 grit. This is the last wheel that I really have to kind of pay attention to when it comes to facets and not removing color that I want to be seen on the face of this material. I don't take too long and I barely lick the face because 600 grit can easily remove some of that yellow that I'm trying to keep. If you can tell, almost all of the white is gone, but a little speck there on the face. It's looking really good. This material is wet in this clip here, so it is not a good representation of the shine. In fact, there almost isn't any shine. 1200 grit goes pretty fast. I don't need to worry about trying to remove any facets at this point, really, and I don't have to worry about destroying any of the face color I was trying to preserve in the past. I'm just making everything smooth, almost no gloss at all at 1200 grit on this material. The back's looking good. I really, really love that little pimple thing. But when it comes to 3000 grit, it's almost exactly the same as 12. There's nothing really to worry about, just smoothing out the stone even more, making sure to replace all the scratches. This material is so soft, I can see 3000 grit scratches. Nothing is shining, really very little gloss. The only thing kind of shining is the silver metallic paint, which is behind the yellow, but that's to be expected because it's like a metallic sparkly paint. Love it. What a beautiful piece. It would have been cool to cut sideways, but it's great this direction too. So usually at this point, I would buff this material or any stone at 1200 or 3000 grit using some aluminum oxide, cerium oxide, or chrome oxide, but you cannot do that with Fordite. At least with any compound I've found and I've ever used, it kind of just melts and destroys the Fordite. It leaves a rougher finish than the 3000 grit that I get, so I don't buff. What I'm going to do is take off this 3000 grit wheel, which is pretty new. Thank you, Johnson Brothers. You know I love you. And I'm going to replace that wheel with a 14,000 grit wheel. 14,000 grit is like the diamond paste that comes with Cab King or Diamond Pacific, but this is diamond inside of a resin wheel. And this will leave a pretty good gloss, almost a shine on Fordite. If I had the wheels, I would take it to 50,000 grit and then maybe like 250,000 grit. But 14,000 grit is going to take this material to a decent shine, which I will, I think is going to be totally enough for whoever ends up with this piece for the rest of their life. So I tighten it up and then we give her a spin. This 14,000 grit was very aggressive, even though it is a fine diamond, so I actually knocked it down with a Diamond T dressing bar. Nothing fancy on this particular grit. I'm just licking the entire surface of the material, trying not to undercut the back because it can kind of blow out some of the back, which is unfinished and a little bit stiffer than everything that I've been polishing up until this point. That's 14,000 grit Fordite. It's got a bit of a gloss, almost a shine. Huge difference from the 3,000 grit wheel. Like I said, I could even see some 3,000 grit scratches. This material is so soft, but 14,000 grit removes all the scratches, all the facets, and leaves a beautiful finish in my opinion. I don't mind that little bit of chippage or whatever's going on there. Yep, beautiful piece. Love the back, looking good. So, now I'm gonna drill it. I won't be doing anything fancy, just the same old stuff you folks have seen me do a dozen times before. I'm using a 2.5 gallon drinking water container as my watering supply. I like it to drip on my material, and I will be using a flat cylindrical burr, 80 grit from Johnson Brothers. If you'd like to see some videos of me drilling by hand, I have about 3 or 4 of them here on my channel. Don't forget to check them out and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Okie dokie, so that's the hole. Not 100% perfect. There's a little bit of curve there on the right for me not holding the piece 100% straight, but that's really not a big deal. That'll get covered up after I braid this up. So yeah, now I'm gonna braid it up. Nothing fancy. I have videos on how I go about doing this. Alright folks, that's that when it comes to Fordite. Thanks so much for joining me. It was actually a lot of fun cutting these pieces for this video. I got a slightly better polish than I usually do when I cut the Fordite since I used the 14,000 grit wheel. There's a lot to learn, a lot more than I shared in this video, so go do your own research. You could teach yourself better than I could teach you. Don't forget to leave a number 1 through 5,900 in the comment section below. Read the comments for the rules on this giveaway. USA only, and if you want it and you're not from the USA, you're going to have to pay for shipping. But that's about it. If you'd like to help support the channel, you could buy this piece. If you're not into this type of braided necklace, you can put a jump ring and a silver chain if you wanted. Or you could cover it up with some silversmithing or whatnot. Who knows? Anyway, thank you so much for watching, my friends. I really appreciate it. I love you. And until next time, see you soon.